Well, hello and welcome to today's edition of the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. Thank you for your attendance and thank you for coming in to support and be a part of the News That You Can Use channel, where we implore ourselves to give you the type of information that can improve your health journey, keep your health maintenance in the place that you desire it. So, got a wonderful show for you today. We're talking about muscles and why muscle movement is so important to our health. Of course, we got the Mainstream Minute today, and of course, your comments and your questions. So let's get right into it. Let's ask God for His blessings and His ability to give us an open mind to learn, gather new information, and of course to apply that. And personally, I ask for God's guidance to remove my arrogance, remove my ego, so I may be a vessel for your benefit. So let's get right to it. Today's Mainstream Minute, we're going to look at some things that are, of course, applicable to what we maybe have going on, some of us, or maybe all of us. There are quite a few articles on the mainstream news these days dealing with, of course, weight gain over the holiday season. And I wanted to mention this for multiple reasons because, I always say that it's today's activity that is going to lead to tomorrow's problems. And it's also today's activity from a positive perspective that will lead to the goodness of the health that you have in the future years to come. So I thought it was kind of interesting here. They're talking about, if you notice starting right here, it says the researchers found that the bulk of this weight gain, they're talking about people gaining approximately a pound or two from like the Thanksgiving holiday to the New Year. And they were saying that this weight gain occurs in the 10 days following Christmas. And they were saying that this is due to people getting off of their regimen during, their time off from work or time off from whatever their normal functions are, and they start to gain weight because they don't go back into their typical activities. And so that makes me think of a person that I saw years ago, and I wanted to just tell a quick story about her while we're on that subject matter, because I want to make a few points. So prior to getting to that, I really want to deal with what I saw on a lot of people's posts over the what I call Thanksgiving, because there's nothing giving about that, right? So nobody takes that in offense, but I saw a lot of people posting, the foods that they're eating and the people that were, at their homes and all this kind of stuff. And just about every person that I saw post had these big old aluminum containers with all this food in it. And so I'm going to get to that in just a minute. I just wanted to tell you a quick story. So I met this lady in approximately March of 2007, I believe it was, and worked with her for the whole year. When I met her, she had 4 medications and 3 medical problems: high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol when she met me. And of course, she was taking 4 medications. I believe it was 2 medications for her high blood pressure, 1 medication for her diabetes, 1 medication for her cholesterol. We worked together, and she was doing wonderful. By August of that year, she was only on 1 medication for her blood pressure. She had lost weight, feeling much better. Everything had changed. And so I sat down with her and I had a conversation with her prior to going to her family. She was leaving the city and going to her family's house in another city. And I just warned her. I said, look, when a person is in poor health, a person is overweight, or a person just has been eating bad for many, many, many years, and then you change and you start doing things in a more beneficial way, is becomes a serious problem when you fall back into bad habits. It seems to take a more serious and a much more aggressive approach in causing serious problems. And so at the current time, Zena Haynes, thank you for coming in. So at the time that, of course, I sat down and had that conversation with her, she was still a normal, functioning, going to work every day, taking care of herself person. And now she's about to go into these holidays. I warned her, I said, look, if I were you, I would mess up on Thanksgiving Day and maybe the day after, and then on Christmas and maybe the day after. But after that, it would be very beneficial for you to get back to your normal routine that you've been doing over these last few months that has improved your body so much. Long story short, February comes, she had gained weight, she had all of her medical problems went back worse because she started eating the way she normally did, the way she used to. Kiana DuBose, thank you for coming in. And she had a massive stroke in that at the end of January, and never spoke and never walked again after that. And I don't tell that story to make anybody afraid. I tell that story because I want to be very honest with people that when you start going down a journey of improving your health, your body makes a lot of adjustments. And that's why, when people tell their testimonies, you hear these wonderful things. But, at the end of the day, it's about the results of the work that you put in. And when you put in that serious work, you literally are going to have a great change in the body. You may not be able to detect it all, but it's there, and it's a wonderful thing. It's like a refreshing, like an entire body refreshing. And then when you go back into those negative things and put all those bad foods and all that stuff in you, then there can be some real serious, dire effects that can happen pretty quickly. And so I wanted to tell that story, and I also wanted to show that. This is what I'm talking about. William Muhammad, thank you for coming in, my brother. These type of pans was on just about every post that I saw on Thanksgiving. It was these type of pans that people's food was in. And so this is aluminum, as everybody knows, but this is leaching into your food. And then people are wrapping their food in aluminum foil. So you're getting a large amount of aluminum in your system. And aluminum, once it gets inside the human body, is considered a heavy metal toxin. So it's very difficult for your body to get these things out. Now, most people are doing this year after year after year. And so let me put it back in context with what I was talking about. We're talking about the average weight gain of a person during the holiday season. And then they go on further in this article to talk about the fact that most people that gain this weight never do anything to lose the weight. So you gain 3-4 pounds this year, and then you gain 3-4 pounds. And that's why some of us, every 10 years or every few years, you got to go buy new clothes. You get heavier and heavier. You never actually go in the right direction. And so at the same way that you're gaining this weight year after year after year, these aluminum toxins are in the body, and you never get it out because these are high metals. And a lot of these toxins that we're gaining in our body every day or every year or every how often, as we continue to gain weight, it's being stored in the fat. And so that's why I wanted to mention this, because of all of those serious, concepts that I'm trying to impart is, number one, Shirley Stewart, thank you for coming in. Number one, the message for the mainstream minute today is that you gain weight every 3,500 calories. And so during this time of the year when people are eating heavy foods, they're eating a lot of foods, they're eating sweets on top of that, ice cream, soda, alcohol, all these things, it's very likely that the average person that does a lot of holiday celebrating is going to gain more than 1 or 2 pounds. And then you go into the next year, you have a New Year's resolution to lose weight, but you really never do that. And so you continue to gain weight over time. And with that fat comes the toxins from that aluminum that you're wrapping your food and putting your food in, cooking your food in. And then the medical problems that you have are getting worse because of the toxins and because of the extra weight. So I hope it makes sense why I wanted to start with that today, because this time of the year, a lot of people are doing a lot of things in the name of celebration but they really are detrimental to your health. So just wanted to mention that so we can take those things into consideration, and hopefully this news can help somebody make a little different choice, and then, of course, improve your health. So today is about muscles, the movement of muscles, and what that has to do with your health. So let's just take a quick look at our muscle systems. This is a picture of a human being, correct, with their skin off and the tissues that overline the muscles. But, you know, when I was in medical school, this is what we actually did. We actually had to take the skin off of our bodies and then get down and open up each one of these muscles. So, you know, some people say that there are 600 anyway, there's 650 different muscles in the body. I think that's irrelevant for the conversation that we're having today, because the muscles and their function is really more important for you to understand than how many they are. You know, that's something a little less important. So let me see. Kiana Dubose says, it's so ironic that you are speaking on this, because I was just saying that I would like to get some cast iron cookware and the real glass Pyrex cookware. Yes, ma'am. That's extremely important for your health that you do that, Kiana, because aluminum is very detrimental over time. And if any of you are experiencing things like I'm experiencing in my family, and just, you know, meeting elderly people in general on a regular basis, you know, so many of them have an inability to remember what's going on now, but can't remember what's going on in their past or anything. So it's a very difficult reality to deal with, and a lot of times once that person gets so forgetful, it's hard to get them on a program that can change them to something different. So it would be very beneficial for everybody listening, and all those that have a chance to watch this video, start, you know, planning and making the investment and saving or whatever you need to do to get your cookware, because that's very important. If you're cooking with aluminum, you're getting aluminum in your body every single day, and that's not going to be beneficial long term. So just in general, we know that the purpose of our muscular system, right, is one of the large reasons is what everybody knows is to move these bones, right? Without the bones of the body, we would just collapse. From the head, we would just fall down. Your head and your feet would all be a mush on the body, right? I mean, on the floor. So our bones, it gives the body structure, so we can stand, so we can have some structure, all those type of things. And so that is probably the most understood and known process on a general basis. I'm talking about just average everyday people, on what the muscles do. And, you know, the one thing that I always like to point out is, let's just take a look at, let's say, these muscles here, which we call, you know, the thigh muscles, or, you know, there's always these different medical terms that we use, but just for the basis of this conversation, these muscles right here are on top of these muscles here. There's two here, there's two here, and that's why we call these the quadriceps. 4 muscles, large muscles that make this the front part of the thigh. But if you look at these muscles, there is what we call a tendon. A tendon attaches a muscle to a bone. Now here you have the knee, and you see that little section there. That is a ligament. A ligament attaches 2 bones together. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because one of the processes that I want us to really think about today is that as I'm discussing this, we have to understand, Aaliyah, thank you for coming in, that every muscle has a particular function. So you notice that this muscle is attached to that bone, which is right next to the knee, right? Or which produces the knee. And up here, you can't really see, but it attaches up there. And so every muscle has an insertion. An insertion is where it originates, and an attachment where it is pulled from. So this muscle, when it contracts, is pulling in that direction, right? And so when you pull in that direction, what you do, you pull the knee towards the stomach, and that is pulling your knee up. So if you're walking, you pull your knee up and you step. You pull your knee up and you step. So that would be the purpose of that muscle and this group of muscles and what they do. And so why am I mentioning that? Because sometimes when you look at some of these trainer videos, these people that are trainers that are putting these videos out here and do this type of exercise, do that type of exercise, sometimes if you are interested in knowing specifics, this is something that you can do for yourself. You can go look up a muscle. They say look at like just do a search for the thigh muscles, and it'll tell you what those muscles are. Or like I just finished, it'll say the quadriceps, and then you find what is the action of this muscle, meaning what is this muscle supposed to do, and then where's the insertion of this muscle, so that you can find out how that muscle is supposed to move, and then it will tell you whether or not this person is telling you correct information. Because some of these things that I'm seeing on Instagram and YouTube, these people don't know what they're talking about. They're, repeating something that somebody else said, but they really don't know. And so just another example, you see here how on this side you have what you can see as 3 large muscle groups in the back. But if we remove those out of the way, you have other muscle structures, right? The interesting thing is that any muscles along the spine that go up and down like this, their job is not to move and not to pull and not to lift. That's what these muscles is. You see these muscles that are going what we consider longitudinal, and these muscles that are going vertical, these muscles are responsible for moving the arm, moving and picking up things. But a lot of people in some of these videos that I watch, they are actually stretching these muscles, and these muscles were not made to lift. These muscles were made to keep the body erect, right? So if we go back to that picture of the skeletal muscles real quick. Where are my skeletal muscles? So if we turn this around and we look at the back, those muscles that align across the spine like this are made to keep the body up. So when you stand up or you're sitting up, that's what those muscles do. When you start trying to lift things, if you ever notice when a little child bends down to pick something up off the ground, they always bend their knees. And that's because when they bend their knees, they take all the pressure off of these muscles and put it on these muscles, which are made to push and lift things. At the same time, we got to show the back of the legs, because this is what's made to lift the body and pick up things. You never want to use these muscles to pick up. That's why people have problems with their back when they lift incorrectly. When you lower your butt down, when you're trying to pick something up like you see children do, you will never have back problems, because when you try to lift something up, if it's too heavy for you to lift with your legs, then you just won't be able to do it. But you see people bend over with their legs straight, bending over from here, and when they try to lift something up, they hurt their back because these muscles weren't made to do that. So Donita Lake, thank you for coming in. So it's very important for us to understand these things, because sometimes you can get yourself in trouble by listening to some of these people and what they say. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If you guys have any specific questions about any muscles, let me know. Now, there are some very specific topics that I wanted to cover today when it comes to dealing with our muscles. But I also want to show this real quick, which I'll get into a little more detail a little later. But this is a lymph system, right? The lymph system. We talked earlier about this being, or in other programs, about this being so important in your immune system. Now, why is that? Now, if you look at all of these different vessels that are coming all over the body, right? If you just take a quick moment to think about what we just finished looking at, and that was the muscles, you'll see that they are very similarly placed, right? So look at all those and the way they're arranged, and you look at the muscles and the way they're arranged. Well, that's because all of these vessels are intertwined with those muscles. Now again, the purpose of the lymph system is to take waste, old cells, bad cells, infected cells, whatever the immune system has taken care of. Once that has been taken care of, we take this back up into our liver and we get rid of that, either through defecation or through urination. So it's a very important system, and this system does not work functionally well unless the muscles are doing well. Now, we have to, for a little bit, we got to talk a little science, and that is about the perspective of the type of muscles that we have in our body, right? Because if you all are sitting looking at me and I put my hand up and I put my hand on my head or I wipe my face, I just did that as a voluntary movement, right? I have to think about doing that and then actually tell my arm to move up to my head, such. But if I was sitting here and I start talking about something very emotional and you all see a tear run down my face, I didn't tell that tear duct to squeeze and push out that water. So that's what we call a smooth muscle cell. A skeletal muscle cell is the ones that we can think to move and we move it. If I want to move my neck, I'm telling those muscles to do that. But if you chew some food and swallow some food, you're not telling the stomach muscles to move. You're not telling the intestinal muscles to move that food down. So those are what we call smooth muscle cells. Why? Because they're doing something on information that is being sent by our brain, but just not by our telling it to or by us initiating the idea. So a smooth muscle cell is considered an involuntary muscle, and what we call a skeletal muscle is a voluntary, meaning that we have to actually say, okay, do something. Involuntary is something that happens based on the nervous system in the body, or in the brain system. So again, without getting too deeply involved in scientific information, I just want to give you some information so you can have a basic good understanding of what we're talking about. Zambezi, thank you for coming in. And so speaking on the skeletal muscles, because we have no ability to tell the smooth muscle cells of the body what to do, like the heart. I can get up and I start running, my heart rate is going to go up. I can sit down and rest, my heart rate is going to go down. But I can't just sit here and consciously say, okay, heart muscle start going faster. You literally have to have some type of emotion tied to that in order for that to happen. So that's the difference between the smooth and the skeletal muscles. Now, the other aspect of a skeletal muscle that we must discuss is the flexion and extension, right? So anytime you have a limb, leg, arm, right? And we're talking about moving it, like I just moved my mouth to my face. I brought that towards my body. So that's called flexion, because it's flexing it and bringing it in, right? Extension of a muscle or extension of a limb would be going away from the body. They also use words called concentric with flexion. Concentric, I just used how to remember that is contraction of a muscle brings it towards you. And extension is like eccentric of the muscle, okay? And then we have what's called isometric, which is when a muscle is just in its relaxed state, when it's not doing any work. So those are the three functions of a skeletal muscle, or our voluntary muscles. And that's important because of what I just mentioned in talking about the lymph system, right? Because these type of activities that we're talking about is what promotes movement in the body, and the movement that we have in the body serves very good purposes when we're talking about good health and longevity. So just like I said, for a few minutes, let's go into this aspect of the little scientific aspect of these muscles. So for sake of the discussion, you see my arm, right? I have it extended out. Let me make sure you all can see that. Change this. So I have my arm extended out like that, right? If I start pulling my muscle in, what I'm doing right here in my bicep is I am squeezing that muscle together. That's why they call that concentric. My bicep muscle has just gotten shorter. So the work it is doing is what? Pulling my arm towards me, right? If I put my arm back out, I just extended that muscle. So I literally took it from being squeezed and shortened to extend it. Now, what is the reason that that has an effect on our lymph system and our blood vessels? Here is a picture right here that kind of shows this in a small degree. So here you see it says leg muscle contractions. The blood flow is going in this direction, as you can see, but that right there is a valve. And so the blood so this is a vein. This is not an artery. This is a vein. So this is blood that is going back towards the heart. And so in the leg muscle, we're talking about something that has to travel against gravity, and then more than likely against whatever type of movements that we're doing. But the movement of the muscle is squeezing. If you see, right, you see my hand squeezing against these blood vessels. And these veins keep the blood from going back down that way, because this is the way it wants to go. It wants to go towards the heart. And so when you squeeze, you push the blood this way, and then when the squeezing stops, these valves close together and keep the blood from going back down that way. So I think you all can see now, while I'm saying that muscle movement is important not only for the blood flow, but for the blood and the lymph flow. Okay? So there's a picture of how the lymph flow is intertwined with the blood flow. So here you have your artery, meaning that if the heart is up here again, and these are the legs we're talking about, so the blood is being pumped into the legs through the artery, the blood is being pumped out of the legs, back to the heart from after being used and after being, picking up all of the waste material and things of that nature, so it's going back in that direction. And going in that direction is also pulling and pushing the lymph fluid in that same direction. So when we take a look again at the picture of the lymph system, my lymph system. Give me just a second, y'all. But anyway, I think you all understand where I'm coming from. With the lymph system is, again, aligned up next to all of these muscles, back, front, head, neck, all of these different areas. And as these muscles move, as these muscles function, it's helping push the blood flow back, which cleanses out these muscles, which cleanses out all the trash and all the things that aren't needed anymore from the lymph system, and it's sending back to the heart. So what? We can get rid of the waste, get rid of the carbon dioxide, breathe in some oxygen, and now we have refreshed blood that can go back out and get to nourishing the body, right? Now, it's very important for us to understand why that is important for the immune system. We've talked on many occasions that there are many things that are important about the immune system. One is, of course, vitamin D that we eat and then the sun activates, right? We have to be hydrated. We have to drink enough water. We have to make sure that our immune cells are being replenished. So that, of course, takes the right type of nutrients, your vitamins, and importantly, your B vitamins. And so when we are producing the right type of blood, producing the right type of immune system, immune cells, it's being activated by vitamin D, it's being activated by our movement, and activated by our staying active, then all of these systems that we just finished talking about are acting well, moving well, and keeping the system boosted. Now, when it comes to the specifics of muscular movement, the reason why I wanted to do this program today is because of the reasons I mentioned earlier, but also because the majority of people in this country are inactive. Sit at home, sit in the car on the way to work, sit at work, sit in the car on the way back home, don't really do a whole lot, park as close as you can where you're going to a grocery store or any type of place. I don't do any holiday shopping, but I know all of you notice what I'm about to mention, and that is people will sit in the middle of the parking lot, hold up traffic so that they can get a spot right next to the door. And there are plenty parking spots way away from the store, but most people are not even occupying those, right? And so we're talking about a society that is very inactive. And when we start discussing the fact that activity has a lot to do with boosting the immune system, activity has a lot to do with maintaining muscle strength, muscle capability, muscle flexibility, and bone strength. See, a person who is very inactive doesn't have the strongest bones that that person could have. When you get out and you put pressure and weight and movement and different type of stresses on the bone, it strengthens that bone. Every day we break apart little pieces of bone and we renew that. It's called osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Osteoclast breaks bone away or takes the old bone and breaks it down, and the osteoblast is what puts new bone back in these areas. And so when we're talking about the benefits of the body, movement is very, 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 very important. So quick point while we're dealing with that is that's the way the inside of a bone looks. And most of you know that because you've seen a chicken bone or some other type of animal bone before, right? But what I'm talking about as far as the renewing of the bone, now this is cartilage you're talking about here, but it's very similar, just using it as an example. Denise, thank you for coming in. So if you just, and Robert, thank you for coming in. If you look at some of this, it's just an example of how little pieces of the bone can be extracted and renewed, and that's the way it looks. So it's not happening in a large area, but a lot of little small areas are being, like let's say that this little area over here next to this blood vessel is weak. So your body might, today in the next couple of days might take that whole little section out and renew it with those cells. But if you're not active, if you're a very sedentary person, then this type of stuff doesn't happen. The bones just continue to be weaker and weaker and weaker. So Denise says, if a person's white blood cell counts are low, what could be the cause? That's a good question. It could be so many different things. Most of the time, when a person has low white blood cell counts, it is due to some type of problem with immunity. So, the first thing that comes to most people's minds would be something like HIV, or a person that's getting cancer treatment and their cells are being depleted. But, the more common cause of that is just malnutrition. And as I say all the time, the majority of people that we see walking past every day in America are malnutritious people because they don't know what to eat, they don't know how to prepare it, and they are very malnutritious in the fact that they don't have the right nutrition going in their body, so they don't produce enough of the right type of cells in order to take care of things. And specifically with the white blood cells, red blood cells, all the cells of our blood really have like a 90-day period. So a white blood cell, when it's made freshly new, will typically last around 90 to 120 days. And so we are remaking them every 90 to 120 days. We're remaking our white blood cells. And so think about that. If we don't have the right nutrition coming in, we either can't make them at all or we don't make them at the right amount. And so, it can be one of those type of things where your counts continue to go down over time. But typically, if you go to a doctor and they test for your white blood cells and there's a problem with your white blood cells, it could be, HIV, other immunodeficient disorders, some type of medications can do that. And then, of course, you have some diseases such as leukemia that can cause those problems as well. So again, the possibilities could be numerous. But, those would be my right off the top answers, Denise. So thank you for that question. So, looking at that picture of the bone and talking about that, it still goes back to the importance of this system. This system, the muscular system, I'm sure some of you that have heard just what I've said so far will probably say, well, I didn't know the muscle system had that much to do with our health. Yeah, that's the reason that I thought it was important to do this program, because to suggest to people to get up and move is just not as simple as to keep your muscles strong and keep your muscles flexible and keep your joints from not feeling so bad, right? Because a lot of people who have arthritis, like we did the program on the joint pain a couple of months ago. And, one of the things I mentioned is that a lot of us know people, like my grandmother back when she was alive, or my mother, or some other older people that I know. They wake up in the morning and they say, my joint just doesn't feel right, or my hands hurt, or whatever the case may be. But what is it that solves the problem? It's usually movement. So a person wakes up in the morning and their joints are kind of tight and they hurt and they're a little achy or whatever. The problem is they get up and they start moving, and after a few minutes of that movement, that joint pain or those pains that they have actually go away. That's because a lot of times the pain could be in the muscle, it could be in the ligament, it could be in the tendon, or it could literally be in the cartilage, or the two surfaces that are together in between those two bones. So there are a lot of different reasons that cause arthritic pains, but the one thing that's common about all of those different problems I just mentioned as far as the joints, the muscles and the tendons and all those, is that movement is what usually gives people some relief, right? And so that is probably the most common idea that we have on why muscle movement is important. But a lot of times we don't realize how much muscle movement has to do with movement of blood, movement of lymph, how it activates so many processes in the immune system that help boost the immune system and make sure that you keep yourselves from being sick. So Shirley X says, what causes osteoporosis in a black person, which I was told is rare? Well, I would say that your statement is probably accurate in general. Okay, so let me see if I can find something specific on that, because that's actually a very good question, Sister Shirley. Let me see, I may have something. Oh, here we go. No, it doesn't. So anyway, I don't really have a good picture, but anyway, let me just use this as an example. So here is a hip joint, okay? And this would be the bone that we typically use to find out whether a person is osteoporosis, or the word that we use is osteoporotic or whatever. Sometimes we use the word osteomalacia, which just means that this, what you see in here, is normal, right? There is a lot of what we call opacities in the bone. Now, what does that mean? Just a lot of space, right? Just like the picture I used just a minute ago, where we're looking at this bone, right? All those little holes in there, that's not abnormal, that is normal. That's the way a bone looks. Why? Because this blood and the fluid is running in here, because this is actually where we make our blood cells, our red blood cells. As you can see there, it says blood factory. So we make our blood cells in the marrow. And so these holes is where all that work gets done. So some of these holes are normal. Now the problem is when these holes start getting too big, or these holes are just not being strengthened. Like if we look at that hole right there, right, you see that little piece of bone there and the piece of bone surrounding it. If that's weak, then the bone is going to be weak, right? So osteoporosis is a problem with the bone, and these areas are too porous. Osteoporosis, the porous areas of the bone get too wide or too weak, and this bone is not strong like it should be. The word osteomalacia is pretty much the same term. It's just osteomalacia could be considered in a person where it's not as severe yet, but osteomalacia is leading to something worse. And when it gets to a point where a certain amount of bone is weak, or a certain percentage of the bone is weak, then that's when we actually make the diagnosis of osteoporosis. Now, what does osteoporosis and black people have to do with each other? Very good question. Osteo, meaning bone, and weakness is malacia or porosis. Maria, thank you for coming in. That is something that occurs more in light-skinned people. So in Caucasians and Asians, they are usually the women that have the largest problem with having weak bones, just as a result of their light skin. Dark people around the world, in general terms, don't have those type of problems. Why is that? Because our skin and the darkness of it attracts more vitamin D, meaning that we have higher levels of vitamin D in our bodies, and that continues to work with the calcium, work with the magnesium, and the other elements that it takes to keep our bones strong. It's usually not a problem in black people, especially when black people are in their endemic areas of the world, meaning most of us are endemic around the equator. The sun is up and it's warm more times of the year. And when we're eating our normal diet, we're getting plenty of vitamin D, and we don't have problems with our bones. But we are starting to develop those type of problems in this country because of what I just finished saying. We're sitting too much. We're staying inside, not getting enough outside time with the sun or movement. And so we're starting to develop them. And even sometimes dark people are doing it because we're just not taking in the right type of foods. But specifically to Shirley's question, black and dark-skinned people usually do not have problems with weakness of their bone as they age, like lighter-skinned people do. And so that's why it's considered rare. And I hope I answered your question, Shirley. So let me know. So again, for those of you who want to keep your bones strong all of your life, it's very, very important to continue doing some type of exercise. And as you get older, you don't need to do anything more than walking. That's good enough. But, you know, so many people try to find places to walk inside. And, you know, there are a lot of reasons maybe that some people, especially as they age, don't want to go outside, but it's just a very good thing for your health to get outside, get activity, and do it in the sun, which benefits you from the perspective of the vitamin D that we just been talking about. But that activity linked with that takes the possibilities of solving problems and maintaining the strength of those bones. It takes to a whole nother level. So another great question. So thank you all for the questions. You are making this program wonderful. So I think I covered all those things that I wanted to do. Now, yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. So again, at the beginning of the program, I talked about, you know, the different reasons that I wanted to do this program, because I want us to always understand how, like I always talk about the fact that we cannot individualize any specific system, right? I can't even talk about muscle movement without talking about the lymph system. I can't talk about the lymph system without talking about the circulatory system, the blood vessels, you know, veins and arteries. Can't talk about those systems without talking about the immune system. So all of these systems are so intricately involved with each other, and you can't never say anything about one system thinking that you have a problem with just one system. And so those were some of the very salient points that I wanted to make. And one of the other ones was some of these videos that we see on Instagram, that we see on YouTube, where these people are showing workouts and doing workouts as trainers, right? These are trainers that are training people to take care of their bodies. And, you know, a lot of times when I watch some of these videos, I just shake my head, because I'm like, that exercise that that person is doing is not anatomically, scientifically correct. Now, what do I mean by that? When we look at the bicep muscle that I just finished talking about, right, in my arm when I moved it, so we're looking at the front muscles, the muscles from the front of a person, right? This is your bicep muscle. The purpose of that muscle is to take this arm and pull it up like I did, right? I took that arm and I pulled it up. When you do that, this muscle shortens. That's what causes it to contract. It shortens, so it's contracting and pulling to make that muscle movement, right? So that is what the purpose of that muscle is. And so if a person says that I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work on this muscle, then you should see them doing some type of activity that does this, right? And so I take a weight and I pull it up like this, and it's difficult for me to pull up. And then if I take my time and take that muscle back down in a slow manner, I'm literally exercising that muscle when it's squeezed, and I'm exercising that muscle as it is stretched. And again, that's called flexion or extension, or concentric and eccentric movements of the muscle, which maximizes its ability, makes it bigger, makes it more defined, makes it, you know, typically when we look at people that are structured from a fitness perspective, we think they look pretty good, right? So every muscle in the body has that exact purpose. And so when you look at the muscle in the back, as I mentioned earlier, some are align the spine to keep the body erect. You know, we don't have back muscles that are for bending. That's not what they do. They keep us when we're standing or sitting. But again, every muscle has a specific job that it does, a specific movement that it is supposed to be doing. And so I just wanted to use one example. I was watching this video, and I just wanted to show you all this and then comment on it pretty quickly so that you all can understand where I'm coming from. So I really don't want to show his name or his site or anything like that, because I don't want this to be personal. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything specific about this person. I just want you to look at the exercise that he's doing, and then I'm gonna make a quick comment. Okay? So watch this real quick.
Alright guys, now that we finish up our clean pulls, we're going to be moving into the deadlift.
Okay, so he called that a clean pull, which I see a lot of people online doing that. And from an anatomical, scientific perspective, that is an absolutely horrible exercise to do if you don't do it correctly. And from my vantage point, he was bordering on doing it right and doing it wrong. Matter of fact, you said you can't see it? Hold on, let me see. Let me try to do it again. Okay, let me know if you all can see this. Let me know if you all can see it.
Alright guys, now that we finish up our clean pulls, we're going to be moving into the deadlift. We're going to be doing a rest pause for straight.
So the point that I'm getting to is that, as I said before, the back muscles are not made to lift. And when you do that type of exercise, you have to be very specific in that you have to lower your butt as far down as you can, which takes the takes the weight completely off of your back and puts it on your leg muscles. Now the leg muscles are made to lift and push and pull. These is what these powerful muscles that are in our legs are made to do, but not the back. And so if you noticed on some of the times when this guy is going down, his butt is not low. And so with his butt not being low, if his butt is up, he's putting a lot of pressure on his back. When you're doing any type of squatting exercise or any type of exercise where you're leaning down like that, your butt has to be as low as possible. Either you are doing a lot of extra pressure on your back muscles, and you might not feel it then. You might not necessarily feel it even after the workout, because while you're working out, when your muscles are warm, sometimes they can literally accept pressure and accept stress and accept sometimes even an injury, and you might not necessarily be able to feel it. But later on in life, or the next day or a few days later, your back is killing you, and you can't even connect with what happened because you did that exercise on Monday, but your back started hurting on Thursday. And so you don't make the correlation that it was that exercise, so you keep doing it, and then as time goes on, you wind up with back problems. But the worst thing is that later on in life, those back problems never healed, and so now you have a back problem that incapacitates you, right? Now, that's extremely important, and I must just mention this because, you know, for all of the women that are on this channel tonight watching this program, I pray that you all have been seeing a lot about these potential kidnappings that have been happening to women in general, but especially black women around this country. You know, that's another aspect of why keeping yourself in good shape and having your muscles in somewhat a good fashion is important, because you may have to fight for your life at some point in a world like we live in. You know, I actually read something today. A young lady posted right here in Houston where, you know, some ladies were walking up to her to, I guess, ask her a question or something, but behind them was another car with some men, and she kind of just didn't really feel the vibe, so she pulled out and left and found that they were following her, flashing their lights, and there was a second car behind their car, and she eventually pulled up into a courthouse or something. I guess the police were there, and the people sped off. And so, you know, I think it's very important for people to know that, you know, we can't just sit and be witnesses of, you know, these news commercials and these other things we're seeing this happening, and not believe that that we may sometimes be in that position to be in that type of danger. So that's point is to that aspect of having back pain. When I watch older people and I look at the condition that they're in, most of them would be easy targets. Whether somebody's trying to rob them or take something or jack their car, if you have very poor physical health, the likelihood that you can protect yourself, of course, as we all know, just with common sense, is very low. But that's something I think we all have to take in consideration. How will you allow yourself to deteriorate or maintain and be able to take care of yourself as you get older? It's not only about health, it is about health, because what we're talking about typically on a daily basis when we're on this program is how to take care of your health. But that health is important as well, because your mental health is very important. And so if you're afraid to go outside because of all the craziness that's happening in this world, how will that affect you? How does that affect your self-esteem? How does that affect your self-confidence? How does that affect you that you don't want to go out and do some of the normal things that have to happen outside of your house and going to visit other people and do all these type of things? Those are realities that a lot of elderly people are dealing with. But as you sit every day and don't do the physical things that keep you in a limber, flexible, mentally and muscular strong perspective, then it's a deterioration process. I'm hoping that I'm making sense, and I'm hoping that you all are getting the point that I'm making. But that was the point of the show today, was to look at the importance of the muscles and how they are intertwined with our overall body functioning, our overall body health, our body's immune system. And then, you know, lastly, other than that, is the mental health positivity that it is to have a functioning body, knowing that you can take care of your everyday activities and also protect yourself, because that is part of the reason that we have muscle structure, right? A muscle has the ability to do the movements that we talk about, but it also protects things. You know, if you get hit in the chest by something, or hit in the shoulder, or hit in the back, the thickness of those muscles protects those organs underneath there. So it is a protection aspect as well. And so I'm hoping that today's program helped you kind of put the muscles in maybe a different category as far as the seriousness that it is tied into our health, and start to look at what you can do on an everyday basis. You know, I always talk about, you know, parking far away you can from the grocery store or whatever type of hardware store, or if you're hanging out in the malls these time of years, park as far away as you can and walk. You know, there are statistical evidence that says that the majority of people that are getting robbed, jumped, snuck up on, that is happening amongst all the cars, when all the cars are bunched up right there next to the building. So if you're parked way away and your car is all out there by yourself, it'd be less likely that somebody's going to run up on you, because it's so easy to see out there. You got to start thinking like this. You know, when you go in and out of stores, the last thing you should be doing is looking at your phone. Make sure you're looking where you're going. Pay attention to who is in your vicinity. Look people in the eye, because when people are planning on doing wrong, when you look them in the eye, they're less likely to attack you. They're less likely to make you the target. They want to get people that haven't looked at them, because, of course, we're talking about being, you know, given a description. So if you don't look at them, it's easy for them to want to get to you, and you can't give a description of it. But you're looking at every person you see in their eye, and especially if somebody's coming towards you, looking them in the eye. You know, put your keys in between your finger, whatever you need to do. But my point is that people during this time of the year, with all this shopping and these being at the malls and all this, you got to be aware of what's going on around you. Don't go in and out of buildings. Don't get in and out of your car with your eyes on your phone. Make sure that you are scoping out before you get out of your car, before you leave the mall or the store, whatever, take a look at what's going on in the vicinity of where you're going. Take a look on what's going on right there by the door. And if there's something that just doesn't look or feel right to you, then you should make a different decision. Very important. Alan Bowden, thank you for coming in. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm about to get off, man. So, yeah, check it out and let me know what you think. So, that's today's program. You all, I appreciate you coming in. That is today's Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. I pray that you all got some news that you can use. My schedule is changing again, so I should be back to Tuesday on a regular basis. I'm thinking about doing one every 2 weeks for right now, till my schedule kind of settles out a little more. So I look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks where we'll have another subject. If there's anything that you have that you would like me to check in, Sister Latonia, thank you for coming in. Let me know, and we'll try to get to that subject. Until then, work hard on your health, because in a society like we live in, good health is only going to wind up with those who work hard for it. And continue to come back. Remember, I still need 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go and do that for me so I can continue to do these type of live programs on my YouTube as well. Tell about 2 or 3 or 4 of your friends. And you all come on back in a couple of weeks and join me again. Thank you, and may you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.